Hi, I'm Nina Zakharenko, a cloud developer advocate at Microsoft, and today I'm going to show you how to be productive with Python projects in VS Code. Let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is check out a Django project that I've created for this demo. The repository is on my GitHub at nnja, and the project is called Hello World Django. I'm going to grab the clone URL for my project, open my terminal, clone the project locally, and then cd into the Hello World Django directory. Let me take a quick look at the README. It gives me all the steps I need to take to install this project. The first is to create a virtual environment, activate it, and then install the requirements. I'm going to create a new Python 3 virtual environment and name it env. Then I'm going to activate it. Next, I'm going to pip install -r the requirements.txt. Great, now we're ready to open code. I'm going to go ahead and open Visual Studio Code in the current directory with code. There are two very important keyboard shortcuts to know in VS Code. The first is open file, Command P. The next is the command palette. On OS X, you'll open that with Command Shift P. The command palette gives you tons of options and actions that you can take without necessarily having to dig through the menu items or know the keyboard shortcuts. The first thing that I'm going to do is open my settings. I can type that into the command palette and it'll narrow down the commands. The other helpful thing about the command palette is here we'll see it shows us the keyboard shortcuts. That would allow me to open that pane without having to use the command palette next time. There are two different types of settings you can have in VS Code. The first are your user settings. They apply to all instances of VS Code. Your workspace settings allow you to customize your VS Code settings for each project and each directory. Here, if we scroll, we'll see that there are some common options at the top. For example, do we want to autosave or not? What font we want to use, what size. As we install different extensions, the extension settings will also be found through this interface. Let's go ahead and open our app. I'll open up views.py to see the very basic view that we have here. Just says hello and prints out a name if one is provided, otherwise we'll default to world. We'll see that VS Code is very helpful and it recommends the Python extension for this file type. Let's go ahead and install it. Once that's done installing, we'll want to click reload so that the extension opens up in our new workspace. Great. We have views.py here. And we'll get one more pop-up. It says that the linter pep 8 is not installed. We'll go ahead and install that as well. Clicking that button will install pep 8 into our activated virtual environment. I'm just going to go ahead and close the terminal here. That way, if we have code that's the wrong syntax or incomplete, we'll get a line here showing us that something is wrong with our syntax. Great. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. Now that we have our Django application, let's open up the terminal in VS Code and run it. We'll open up the command palette here and type in Python create terminal. That shortcut will create a new terminal window for us, automatically activating the virtual environment. So if I run python manage.py run server and take a look at this URL here, we'll see our Hello World app. Awesome. What about if we want to debug our app and examine it as it's running? The first thing we'll want to do is set a breakpoint. We can do that by clicking in the gutter on the left-hand side. I'm going to click to the left of line number 7 and activate a breakpoint. The next thing we have to do is open the debug view here by clicking on the bug with the no over it. When we first open it, we'll see that we have no debug configuration. That's okay. If we click this gear button, VS Code will set one up for us. It creates a default for Python that contains a few different options. One is run the debugger for the current file, run it for a Django app, or run it for a Flask app. Here we want to select Django. And we can go ahead and close our launch.json configuration file. Now, let's run the debugger by clicking on this big green arrow right here. We'll see this bottom panel change to red to indicate that the debugger is running. Let's go back to the browser and then refresh our app. We'll see that it immediately kicks off the breakpoint at line number 7. We'll know that the breakpoint is active because there's an orange arrow here. There's a few options that we can take from here. First, we'll see that there's this hovering pane that's open with a few different icons. The play button lets you continue running the application. Step over goes to the next line. Step into will step into a function call. Step out will step out of it. We can also restart or stop the debugger. On the left-hand side, we'll see all our local variables. So we'll see the name, the default name world here. We can also click into our request and look at that. So if there was a body here or cookies or files that were uploaded, we would see them by expanding these values here. We can set up a watch in this pane by clicking the plus button. So we can set up any expression to watch as the app is running. Here I'll do name. I'll also do greeting. This variable is not yet set because we're still on line number 7. Once we go to line number 8, greeting will be set. We'll see here that there's a name error. Greeting is not defined. Once we step over onto the next line, we'll see that our watched variable greeting has now populated. There's one more thing that we can do on the screen, and that's right up here. We can open up the Debug Console, and that'll give us this little prompt here that will let us type in whatever we want. If I wanted to see the value of name, I can type that in and it would print out, or the value of greeting. We have helpful suggestions here on the terminal, which is great. And I can type in any expression here that I want. Awesome. I'm going to stop debugging for the time being and remove this breakpoint. Let's open up our template with Command P. It's at index.html. With VS Code, we can also debug Django templates. All we have to do is set a breakpoint in that very same way. So I'm going to set a breakpoint here, open the debug pane, start the debugger. To go to this URL to trigger the breakpoint, so I'm going to command click here to follow. And we'll see that familiar yellow arrow. The breakpoint has stopped here. And we can set up a watch for greeting to see what the value is. Can also see our locals here. Or we can open up the debugger terminal here to examine the value of greeting. For anyone who's worked with Django templates before, you'll know exactly how useful this is. I'm going to stop the debugger. Let's open up our views.py. I talked a little about linting earlier. For example, if I change the syntax here, we'll see these underlines indicating that the syntax is now incorrect. This and much more is part of the default settings for the Python extension for VS Code. The default settings also include checks for PEP 8, Let's say I delete the line between my method and my last import. I'll get a red underline here showing me that my code is no longer PEP 8 compliant. In VS Code, you can also automatically format your Python files by opening the command palette and typing in format and selecting Format Document. VS Code will also show this handy pop-up allowing you to pick which formatter you'd like to use. I'm going to select Auto PEP 8, and the terminal will open and Auto PEP 8 will be installed. Now if I go and try to format my document again, my document will be PEP 8ified automatically. Awesome, easy, and clean. We'll see here that my imports are also a bit of a mess. I can have VS Code automatically optimize my imports for me by opening up the command palette and selecting Organize Imports. Awesome. That's so nice and neat. VS Code allows us to easily navigate through our codebase. Let's open urls.py in the Hello folder and examine views.index. There are a few ways that we can navigate our codebase. We can go to the definition of this views.index. We can peek the definition. We can also find all the references. VS Code also provides some helpful refactoring tools like rename symbol, change all occurrences that unfortunately I don't have time to talk about today. If you wanted to see where views.index was declared, we'd want to go to definition. You can either right-click and go to definition or use the keyboard shortcut F12. So I'm just going to right-click here and go to the definition. Great, that brings us to the definition of the index view. Going back to urls.py, if I right-clicked and did peek definition, that would open a small window right here, right in line with my code, where I can take a look at the definition without losing my place in this file. Super helpful. You can also right-click and find all references. That'll show a pop-up window with two files here, urls.py and views, where I can click around and see all the references to index without leaving my place in the file. I find that really helpful. As we saw earlier, VS Code automatically picked up our virtual environment, but we can also click in here and select any virtual environment that we'd like. VS Code also provides really great Git integrations. Let's open our README file and make some changes. Let's say we run the server like this. We'll see this blue line here indicating that changes were made, and if we click on it, it'll show a small inline diff. We can also go to the version control tab on the left-hand side. It looks like a Git merge icon. If we click it, we'll see some changes. We made changes to views.py. There's a diff, and we made some changes to the README. If we wanted to stage our changes, all we'd have to do is click this plus icon. Now VS Code will show us our staged changes. We can either unstage them, open the file, or click here to see the diff. If I wanted to commit this change to the README, all I'd have to do is enter a message here and then press Command Enter. And that commit happens for me automatically. Awesome. You can also access these from the command palette. So I can stage changes, commit staged, etc. There are lots of other powerful Git plugins. For example, I really recommend Git Lens. Another great plugin is an integration with GitHub pull requests. That doesn't come stock with VS Code, so I'll have to go ahead and install the extension. Click on the square icon at the bottom to open extensions, and then search for GitHub. GitHub pull request will be the first result. Go ahead and click install. reload to activate it. Now when I go to my source control tab, I'll see something new here, this GitHub pull request section. When I open it, I may have to authenticate for the first time. Once I've done that, I can go ahead and click through these sections and see the pull requests that are assigned to me or created by me. Here I've created a sample pull request. Once I click on it, I can see the description of the pull request. I can check out the pull request locally, leave a comment, merge it, close it. Can also see any files from the pull request and diff them locally. Let me close this tab so that you have a better view, and we'll see the difference between the README locally and in the pull request. This plugin is incredibly powerful. It means you don't have to leave your editor to collaborate with others and work on pull requests. It's all here in one tab. You don't have to open your browser. You don't have to check out other branches. I really love this plugin. That's it. That's all you need to get productive with Python in VS Code. If you have any questions, you can follow me on Twitter. My username is NNJA. Feel free to tweet at me or send me a DM. It was great chatting with y'all today. Bye!